All right. Hey, folks. Thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. We're really excited to talk about all things fundraising. I think that's a rare thing to say, but I get very excited about it. I know across this panel, a lot of us have spent over a decade now doing fundraising, so we're very used to chatting about it day to day. We've got some of our favorite fundraisers in the space here, and I've had the privilege of working with some of you guys over the years through various campaigns and trainings that we do. And for our folks who are joining, as a reminder, New Politics Academy is where servant leaders come to become political leaders. And through our nonpartisan programming, training, and mentorship, we help servant leaders prepare to serve their communities and country again through politics. And as I said, today's Lunch and Learn is focused on fundraising. And I'm sure a lot of people were asking why when we sent this out. And it's because this is one of the biggest things that folks feel nervous about. It's often hard for servant leaders, especially, to do fundraising because it feels really contrary to their values. But hopefully, we'll demystify some of that, answer some of the bigger questions that folks have. And I love to use this quote, as I know our director of programs, Lucy, also uses. One of our alum who ran for office and won describes fundraising as drinking a sardine milkshake. And I think that always gets a laugh out of me because it's accurate. But despite that, fundraising is really learnable and doable and eventually palatable for everybody. So hopefully through these questions, we'll kind of get to the heart of how to do this work. And for the folks joining, if you could make sure to use the Q&A button to submit your questions, I'll take those, and I have some pre-registered questions from when you registered. But just to get right into it, as I mentioned earlier, we're joined by experts in the field to answer our questions. And I'm going to do a brief bio of each of you. So first, I've got Rosetta Akosan. Rosetta is the founder and CEO of Myers Oxen Political Consulting, a progressive firm based in St. Louis. Her path into politics began early at just 8 years old, knocking doors alongside her family, and that experience shaped her belief that strong campaigns are built by strong teams. Since then, she's helped knock over 400,000 doors and supported dozens of candidates and initiatives. In addition to leading her firm, she's also a partner at Moxie Media and a trainer with the National Democratic Training Committee. Thanks, Rosetta, for joining us. Um, Shelby Friedman. Shelby is the Donor Engagement Director at Electing Women Alliance, where she works to mobilize women donors and support Democratic women candidates across the country. She brings more than a decade of fundraising experience, most recently serving as Finance Coalition's Deputy Director for the Harris Walls campaign, and previously as the Deputy Finance Director for Wes Moore's gubernatorial run. Shelby is especially passionate about bringing more underrepresented voices into the political process. And last but certainly not least is Whitney Holt, the executive director of United for Virginia's Future PAC, launched by Governor Abigail Spanberger to recruit and elect common sense candidates across the Commonwealth. Whitney has been a key member of Spanberger's team for years, helping lead everything from her historic inauguration to her gubernatorial and congressional campaigns. Now she's using that experience to build the next generation of Democratic leadership in Virginia. Again, thank you all so much for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with a group question. Um, I think this is a great one, and feel free to come off mute and answer. But how did you get started in political fundraising, and what drew you to support like servant leaders in particular? And Rosetta, hi to our special guest here.
Thank you all. Yes, this is parenting in 2026, friends. I will jump right in, remembering that I got my start in this work at a very young age. I'm doing the same with my own kid. I think fundraising is really important because I grew up in a field background where you're talking to people, you're embracing them, you're getting in touch with them, you're making a hard ask for them to vote for the candidate or volunteer. It's really the same muscle. Fundraising is a very similar muscle. We are asking people to give, to support, to invest, to be a part of the larger campaign infrastructure. And I think probably on my first internship, I made that click and realized, oh, this is the same thing. I could do this. I can be a part of that. It also means that I get to come on to the campaign a little bit earlier than some other people that are working in this field, and sometimes that can be gig work. So really, it was just an aha moment of I think I could do this. This feels like the same thing. I'm going to give it a try. And so I did that in an internship that I had.
Thanks, Rosetta. Shelby or Whitney?
Yeah, I can jump in. It's great to be with everyone today. I really came to fundraising and campaigns really because I had a lot of passion about like issue advocacy. That was really my approach to it. So I was super interested in foreign policy in college, and that was kind of how I started out with my internships. And the first real like political job I had was with a political organization that endorses candidates and raises money for them and had a foreign policy focus. And so in doing that work, actually, got to work with a lot of the candidates who were, part of that exciting class in 2018 that we're running. And that included a lot of like service oriented leaders. And from there, I really knew that if I wanted to make more of a career out of this, that I needed to go and get that hands-on experience on a campaign doing fundraising, sort of like on the day-to-day in the grind with the candidate, with the team. And so that was what I did and spent, several cycles doing that. And now work sort of more with donors and helping them identify their priorities and organize their communities. So that was really my entree into the work.
Yeah, and I came to political fundraising in an interesting way. My background was in political science with a minor in communications, and then I taught social studies education for many years. So I really came to it from the perspective that to build a winning campaign to serve communities, fundraising is an important and essential part. Whether we like it or not, that is the current reality. I love the idea of a sardine milkshake because that feels appropriate. But just knowing that women candidates, candidates of color often struggle the most with fundraising, but it's so essential. I wanted to lend my skill set to helping with fundraising in particular.
I have a client that she's coined this phrase, and so now we're all repeating it. But her phrase when fundraising, she's like, "I didn't choose capitalism; capitalism chose me," and that feels very real to the sardine milkshake theory that is being shared.
I love that we all from different backgrounds, and I know, Rosetta, that we're all going to borrow that one as well as the sardine milkshake moving forward. So feel free for the folks listening in to join in on taking part in that in the future.
Love it.
Uh, Love that. Shelby, I have a question for you, kind of leading to like the servant leader background, especially with your work with Governor Wes Moore and his story as a U.S. Army officer. I know it probably resonated with many of your donors, but how did you leverage like his service narrative in your fundraising approach as you guys thought through how to, target donors and talk to them?
For sure. And I just want to say, fundraising can be a sardine milkshake, but it can also be really fun. Like just to add on to what Rosetta was saying about being the first one on the team, you also get to go to some of the coolest places with the candidate and do really cool things. And it's cool for the candidate too. So I just want to make the plug that it's not all pain and suffering. So yeah, I mean, so working for Governor Moore when he was a first-time candidate, like the service background, I think was super important for his pitch. I think in general for first time candidates when they're running, there's a natural question of why do you deserve the public's trust in this position of public authority? And so I think for any candidate who has a service background, it's really easy for them to make that case, both publicly and to donors who are going to ask similar questions like, why are you doing this right now? And so if you've spent, years of your life dedicated to defending the country, how Governor Moore had and leading troops in Afghanistan, I think, it gives you some immediate credibility with folks that you are service minded, you put other people's interests ahead of your own, and that you're willing to put in hard work. And in terms of like the actual pitch to donors, I mean, this was something that really was a through line through Governor Moore's campaign and into the administration. He talked really clearly, like in conversations with donors and at fundraisers, about the important role service had played in his life, growing up and dealing with challenges as a teenager and ultimately finding his path through service. And that was a big part of his why, like why he was running for office. So in that was like one of his first promises was we're going to get into government in Maryland and we're going to create a service year option for all Maryland students. And that was something that he did in his first year in office. So I think donors really resonated with that. They liked these firm ideas, and that made for a important part of his overall pitch.
And I think thank you, Shelby, for sharing. And I think that's a lot of why we support servant leaders, right? Is like they get into office and they immediately start getting the work done because they know how to do the hard stuff. So thank you for sharing, Shelby. Um, Whitney, I know Governor Abigail Spanver was a successful congressional candidate. We worked together on some of her campaign stuff before she ran for governor. How can servant leaders build on their track record for subsequent campaigns, running for re-elect or even higher office?
Yeah, I think that's so important. You are there to serve, first and foremost. And so showing voters that you are going to follow through on any pledges that you made during the campaign, you're there to, show them successes that they can feel and see in their daily lives. Governor Spanberger won her first congressional race in a really, really competitive district because she worked really hard. She reached out to all voters in all parts of the district. There were very rural parts where people were like, oh, don't waste your time going there. But she did. She showed up and she talked to the constituents in that area about reliable internet service and how that was a priority for her if she was elected to Congress. And so building that proven track record of support of success was really important because she could build on that and prove to voters that, look, you can trust me. I will work hard for you. And again, those real results that they could see and feel in their daily lives. She was hyper focused on community projects, infrastructure projects, and then she and her team prioritized constituent services. If you had an issue with a federal agency, they had a whole team of really dedicated and responsive people who could help you with that. So that laid the groundwork for her to keep winning reelection in that competitive district, and then ultimately, when she ran statewide, she could take that body of work, that the stories of success, and apply it to all regions of the state.
Thank you. And Rosetta, one for you. What strategies, when you're consulting with your clients and candidates, do you use to help them build a donor base, especially for first-time candidates?
Yeah, first time candidates are, we're excited that they're running. There have been so many more people that have decided to come and be a part of this. But that also means that they probably have not spent a lot of time directly asking people for money, or they don't have that muscle that's built. And so we do a lot of tell us about who your background is, and do a little bit more of mapping of who you are. What are the groups of people that you belong to, or where did you graduate from? Really creating these different buckets and different lanes to identify people that would be close to the candidate. Now, there are people that are going to give because they share the same values and they have the same interests. But those people that they have personal relationships with, the folks that they, were on a math league or a debate team, or were a part of their wedding, like those folks, and adding them to the list, and really getting our candidates. If you're a first time candidate and you're listening today, please organize your contacts. All fundraisers will tell you to organize your personal contacts. We need first and last names so that we can help you find if there's a donor history or a little bit more about them. Nicknames are cool, but we need their contact information. So that's the one thing that I will definitely just encourage. And we help our clients kind of put that together and organize all of those different pieces so that we can help them build a list that mimics them and people that can really be a part of those values for them early on. But it takes a little bit of just getting organized and then creating a space for us to continue to grow that.
And if you are a participant of Foundations or one of our programs, that's one of the things that we help you do. So Rosetta, thank you for the plug. Uh, just a general question for all of you. Obviously, we've talked about organizing your network now and how you communicate kind of the wins that you have and the narrative. But what advice do you have for servant leaders who are like nervous and new to fundraising and
I'm
starting the
happy
milkshake
to
side?
I'm happy to jump in here with this one. Think about encouraging folks to give as an investment in the community and the leadership that they want to see. They're not just giving you money because they like you or they, want to be your friend. They're giving money. They're investing their hard-earned dollars because they see opportunity for a better future, and you are part of that. And so, look at it as an investment. Also. Talk about what the money goes to, right? It's not just going, into your bank account. It's being used back in the community, whether it's yard signs or TV ads or literature for the door knockers. These are concrete investments in a future and representation that they want to see.
I would also try to to take a little bit of the pressure off. I mean, these are important asks that you're taking to people, but you are also hopefully building a relationship with the people you're talking to, or you're going to someone that you do have a relationship with. And so I would, think about this is a conversation. You want to get to know these people. And so the ask should come like after you have sort of gotten to know this person and had a little bit of a conversation with them, like if you connect to someone in call time, do the things like Whitney was saying, like explain to them about the campaign, but also ask like, what are the things that really motivate you today? So I would try to keep it like, a two-way conversation and really get to know the person on the other end of this relationship.
And plus one to what both Shelby and Whitney just said, I think a lot of people are concerned about making it transactional with people, especially that they have a relationship with, or that their kids play with, or whatever their time might be. I think the more time you spend cultivating the actual relationship, right? We are in the business of building relationships, like at the door with the voters, with the donors. You have to do that work, right? So there has to be a little bit of the small talk to get to know you, the why do you care that is there. And then you got to remember that as a candidate. And if you don't have a mind like a steel trap, which is okay, just take really great notes, right? Make sure you're taking really great notes of the last conversation. If someone tells you that they've got a parent that is their health is failing them and they're working through that, make sure you ask about that person the next time you're talking with them, right? Like that's just an example of how to make it more personable, but also reminding the people that you're asking to invest that you too are a person and you too are going through some of the same things that they might be going through, because people vote and give with empathy and sympathy at the very front of what they're doing. And if you don't show a little bit of vulnerability yourself, it's going to be very difficult for someone else to see that from you.
All really great answers. And I would double tap on the relationship aspect. I think that's another thing where, alluding to this earlier with folks who have run for higher office or multiple reelects, those relationships matter. And you're not just picking up the phone once to call them and ask them for money once, but you're picking up the phone to inform them about what the campaign's doing. You're talking to them, for advice and things that they might care about. And you're staying in contact with them. It's a long-term relationship that you're investing in, as well as the donor investing in you and your leadership, wherever that might be, right? So thank you all for sharing that. Um,
And Tiffany, if I can add
yeah,
one more thing, we're big on thank yous. Thank you, thank you, thank you call, thank you letter, thank you text. Like hit them with the gratitude.
yeah, I think that that's exactly right. And I think the best campaigns do that and get that process set up really like quickly and regularly. This actually came from a question from the pre-registration, but it kind of is about this kind of topic there we're on already. How do you get the campaign? How do you keep the momentum going after the initial campaign launch and fundraising? Because everybody sees a big bump when you first launch, right? That's your Rolodex, that's your first 24, 48 hours. But this came from TR Richardson earlier. And yeah, how do you keep the momentum going after the initial campaign launch?
Yeah, I think some people asking some folks early on, having a list of house parties or folks that are excited to do more, they're going to give on that very, very first day, but also like make your rounds around whatever the area it is that you're running for, and start setting up some of those house parties where you are, one, getting the votes of the people that are there, and two, you're also fundraising from them. And so those sometimes could be very smaller rooms, sometimes they could be larger rooms, but it allows you to continue talking about what's happening with the momentum. I know in larger campaigns, the press tour is also a part of how you continue to be relevant and how you're posting things and interacting with people. I mean, pick a medium. We're talking to people on Threads, on Facebook, on any of these different paths. But I think as long as your campaign decides a follow through plan for whatever it is that you're doing, you can continue to keep people invested. Something that's really worked, and one of my clients is the Missouri Democratic Party, and so we're always trying to keep the momentum, right? What we have done is really highlight. Harry S. Truman is actually from the state of Missouri, so we've been doing something that Harry used to do called the Whistle Stop Tour. Right, so we took something that happened a long time ago, we tweaked it, we're doing it and using it on Zoom because people are not exactly traveling by train anymore like they were doing during the Truman administration. But we're taking that opportunity to really just reinvent the wheel and be creative and get our other people to be involved. So I think find opportunities that are fun. Also, if it's fun for the candidate and fun for the campaign, it's going to be fun for the people that are attending.
I would be sure to celebrate your wins too. Those are always good moments to remind folks that your candidate is there, or if you're the candidate that you're still there and you're running. So like for example, even in a small race, like if you get an endorsement from the mayor in your town, you should send that to your donors or to the people you've tried to call and said that they were on the fence. Like these are all important like points of validation to show people that you do have momentum. And if it's happening, that's great. But if no one knows about it, it doesn't matter. So you have to make sure that you're communicating to people and like staying in really regular touch as you're notching every little win along the way.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to get creative and you might have to create some urgency where none exists, right? Your launch is a really great time to raise a lot of money. End of quarter or end of filing deadlines, really, really important. But sometimes you need to create some urgency, motivate people to give outside of those typical times. Maybe you're about to place an order for 2,000 yard signs and you need an extra X number of dollars, to get that in. Or you want to say, hey, this is the midway through the month fundraising goal. That's helping keep track of the timeline and creating a little bit of urgency where none really does exist.
Those are all really great pieces of advice. Rosette, I have a question specifically for you. Treasurer Adam Lane came from the classroom to running for office. What challenges and opportunities did that background present from a fundraising perspective for you?
Yeah. Traditionally, our teachers are not exactly paid well. So his peers are folks that are not going to be able to really fund a full campaign. What's great about Adam and his background that existed there is that he made it a point to just be a part of the community in a very different way, where he had some inroads there. I will say for Adam, especially after being appointed to the treasurer role and just having his first full campaign where he was really running, we spent a lot of time doing a lot of one-on-one conversations with folks early on with enough time for us to be able to fundraise for the campaign. And so setting up some of those stakeholder meetings early on so that he had the time and energy to build a rapport so that it wasn't uncomfortable or weird when it got time to ask for funds or ask someone to support the campaign. So I think for a first-time candidate, someone that's deciding to run, the earlier you start with having some of those preliminary conversations, the kick the tire conversations allow you to have a little bit of depth there when it comes time to build out that fundraising program. And so that worked really well for us.
Thank you. I think for some folks had questions about like how do you build a network before you run, and I think exactly that, right, Rosetta? Identify folks in your community who can potentially give to you, and don't treat it as transactional, but truly an investment in future long-term relationship building and their investment in your run in the future as well, even if you haven't launched your campaign yet. So thanks for targeting that, Rosetta. I think it was a question that a lot of folks had. Um, Whitney, how has your experience for you as a servant leader, trained as an educator, informed your work as a campaign staffer?
Well, if you can work with middle school social studies students, you can pretty much work with anything. So certainly, I thrive in chaos. But more seriously, as an educator, you meet the students who come into your classroom where they are. They have a variety of different experiences and knowledge about certain subjects. You have to quickly assess, okay, what do they know? What do they not know? Where do we need to get them? And so it's kind of the same with engaging with, whether it's prospective donors or supporters in the community, finding ways to communicate with them in an earnest, effective way based on what their interests and needs are. If you have somebody who has a child with diabetes, like they're really focused on the cost of insulin. And so you hear from them, you see where they are, you meet them where they are. And being passionate about improving student outcomes is very similar to being invested and passionate about our communities and our political system. So it seems strange to some, but I actually think it's actually tied back to improving lives of those around us and in our communities.
Oh, we appreciate that. And obviously, at New Politics Academy, I think that applies across the board. We try to find servant leaders to staff campaigns as well as run as candidates. And I think that's exactly why when he that mission alignment of like just doing whatever you can to get the job done. Thank you. And Shelby, you're at Electing Women Alliance now. And what role does donor community building play in sustainable long-term support for servant leaders beyond like their single campaign?
For sure. I think often when we're fundraising in a campaign environment, there's an intense time pressure on things like you have to meet your fundraising deadlines, you have to raise your budget, and a campaign has a set end date. And so with those dynamics, we're not always investing the way we should, or there's a tendency to not invest the way we should in the long running relationship. I mean, there's lots of great strategies for doing that in a campaign setting too, that every campaign should be implementing. But I think that, there's a lot of ways to keep our donors engaged year round. So, some of the things we've talked about, like having a briefing update with your donors that is not tied to an ask. When you get to the end of the campaign, let's say you win, there will be lots of opportunities to celebrate and to thank your donors for their role in getting you there. And depending on, what sort of office you're heading into, you might have the opportunity to call around and ask people for advice. I'm heading into this office and have a little bit of time now to prepare. What advice do you have? What do you think? Would love to hear from you. So I think that it's important that we're keeping folks engaged beyond just the like urgency and the deadlines and the asks, and sort of again like continuing to cultivate those relationships, because you'll probably have to run for reelection, or you will probably be running for another office down the line. And so, it can be a real poison pill if people feel like, oh, I gave you this money and then I never heard from you again, and now 4 years later you're calling me again, like what happened? So you want to make sure that you're keeping that like a really warm and active relationship.
Thank you, Shelby. And I think everybody's alluded to this already, but like your thank yous matter, their multiple touches matter, but also staying organized so you know who you haven't talked to, especially when you're getting into the hundreds of people donating to your campaign instead of just like a handful of people. So it's a great thing to call out. A lot of questions in the chat have to do with this. A lot of folks who are thinking about running and might be first-time candidates soon. We've already kind of touched on this, but we'd love a little bit of a deeper answer from any of the folks who are willing here. How do you talk about money and fundraising in an authentic way? So going beyond the investment lens, but like, when you talk to your candidate or clients that you guys are working with, how do you help them align with the authenticity of raising for money when it does feel sometimes adverse to their own principles? The whole, capitalism didn't, I didn't choose capitalism, it chose me thing.
Yeah, I'll
I'd
jump
say
in here first and just share. I think talking about the expenses of the campaign is like one of them. Like, yes, we are buying yard signs, but why are we buying the yard signs, right? Like, take it another step further. We want to make sure people know the name that they need to vote for on election day. We want to make sure that there's visibility. We want to give people who, maybe can't go out and knock doors for us, but they could host a sign. We want to give them an opportunity to come be a part of this campaign. And I think when you are asking for what you need on those campaigns and you're being smart with the funds that are coming in, those are things that you can also allude back to donors. Nobody wants to give money where they feel like it's being wasted, right? The term flushing your money down the toilet is something that comes to mind. People want to know what's happening next. They want to be a part of that. And so you got to provide the context, but also why it's important to the campaign while also creating that sense of urgency and being a person. So it can be a lot to do there. And so I highly recommend first time candidates, if you got someone that you can practice some of these conversations with before you get on the phone with someone, or a good friend that would help you get comfortable being able to do that. It's also all in about how you're asking. And if you sound really desperate, or you sound uncomfortable, or you're talking yourself out of that donation, then the other person on the other end is going to know that. And so I would spend some time, developing this muscle of asking for funds, even though it feels antithetical to what you would typically do in your life.
And I would say just being honest, just being really, really honest. It would be very hard to win a campaign if you didn't raise any money, because there are just costs associated with it. And so people appreciate honesty and transparency.
Thank you. And this kind of someone in the chat said, how should a first-time candidate orient themselves in the early days of their campaign? How and who should they begin asking for money from?
Yeah, I mean, I think the traditional wisdom is that you start with your Rolodex. Like I think we've talked about a little bit, but who are the people who are the closest to you, who are going to be both the folks you want to go to as you're like even testing the waters to think about running and getting their advice and their input, but those are also going to be some of your first supporters, because they do know you, they want to see you succeed, and you really won't have to sell them that hard on it. So I think those are the folks in the early stages. And wherever you're running, identifying, more broadly in the political landscape of your community, like who are some of the important voices in, the 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 party where I am that can help sort of give guidance, like I would definitely start having those conversations from the start. And it can give you an idea too of, is this someone who might be able to be an ally to me? Or are there, other folks thinking about running that I should know of, and really trying to identify those folks that are going to be in your corner from the start.
Anything to add, Whitney and Rosetta? I think that's pretty good, but
Yeah, just, good donor research is taking a look at who gives in your area, what kind of races they support. In Virginia, we have very good transparency with political donations. So, we can see kind of, okay, who supports local board of supervisors races, who supports the congressional races and the Senate races, and just orienting yourself to the players that already exist outside of your network. But agree with Shelby, you start with those folks who know you best. But then as you expand, look and see who's invested in those races.
Yeah, and to take it just one step further, I think if you're running for the first time in this area, part of your research is knowing what was raised last time in this race, how many people were in this race, how many people showed up to vote, because it will be difficult to build out your plan if you don't have some of those important pieces that are there. And if you've got great transparency in your state, Missouri's is okay. But if you've got great transparency in your state and you can see who those donors are and who was there, then that will allow you to really just see it all the way through.
and beyond, I guess, launch and your initial fundraising, Brittany Kerouac asked in the pre-registration, what fundraising tactics have the best ROI? I know my answer, which is call time, unfortunately. Fortunately and unfortunately, but other kind of, if anybody could elaborate on those pieces or things that they see.
I mean, if you're in a position to mobilize some raisers to be working on your behalf, that's always an important, force multiplier. So, in smaller races, are still plenty of opportunities to find people who are like leaders in their community. So I always feel like that's an important part of call time is not just asking for the one-off donations, but asking who are the folks who can help host an event for you, or if there's someone who is really well connected, like can they be a member of your finance committee? And even if you're like, well, what's a finance committee? It doesn't have to be like a really super structured thing, but it's just your kitchen cabinet of people who are going to help you connect with more networks and expand your fundraising reach. So I always try to think of like, how can we scale this a little bit? And so finding those folks who are going to be able to be active raisers for you and really like your top booster, those are important folks.
And I'd add, like, you're not alone in doing this. Not only do you have hired staff, but as Shelby said, like, you have your kitchen cabinet. There are people around you who are encouraging you to do this. When you articulate that you want to run for office, they're there and supportive of you, and it's okay and encouraged to ask them to go an extra step and volunteer and help you figure out how to take this thing all the way to election day, right, and all the way to the ballot. Um, but any other tactics, fundraising tactics? Winnie, you mentioned earlier fabricating urgency, and that's related to both like email, text, call time, all of those things. But any other tactics that you guys would, if someone could speak to like events, for instance, that'd be helpful, I think, for folks.
Yeah, one thing that we did last year, Virginia is surprisingly large. If you look at the farthest western end to the eastern end, I mean, that's like an 8-hour drive. And so we had to be really, really cognizant of how the governor spent her time. So with events, one thing that we did is we tried to form really robust host committees. If we had like 3 different donors in Charlottesville who had expressed some level of interest, we would contact all of them and say, hey, can we hop on a Zoom? Can we introduce you? Can we all co host one big event together to maximize the amount of people and the networks that we could reach without doing 3 separate events in Charlottesville? So, have a really inclusive, welcoming mindset when it comes to events. The more the merrier is the approach that we always took.
Thanks, Whitney. Rosetta, anything to add on the tactics that haven't been
I think,
mentioned?
yeah, I think spreading out, what Shelby was saying, spreading out some of the work when it comes to doing the fundraising and having some folks that are raisers or bundlers that are putting together some checks for you. If you know some friends that enjoy hosting some people and really want to help and support in that way, that will allow, you to have a little bit of reprieve when it comes to fundraising. And it makes it a little bit more fun because you've got a partner in this work that you're doing. So all of that is super helpful.
Yeah, and I
Great. And
think
then,
Oh, sorry, I was just going to add, like, I think most campaigns now have some sort of like digital or small dollar component of their program. For most candidates, it's not going to replace your traditional, more major donor oriented fundraising. So I think that can sometimes be like a common misconception that like I'm going to have a viral moment and like send an email and I'm going to raise my whole budget. And that is unfortunately for most folks just not how it goes. It's more the traditional like shoe leather, working the phones, going to events kind of work that's going to get it done.
I love that you brought that up because it's something that we talk about in all of our trainings that if you go viral, that still won't replace your major donor program. And we've worked with many, many candidates who have gone viral in the past and you're still doing call time. They are still doing events. They are still hitting the pavement and doing whatever they can to win. And it's not always guaranteed that you're going to win just because you go viral, right? So thank you, Shelby, for bringing that up. Um, Sorry, did you have something else to add?
Oh, just I've heard, and I've never been on the like spending side of the campaign. I've not been a manager, but what I hear folks say is you will spend more money producing a splashy launch video than it will raise. So, it's my secondhand wisdom that I've heard.
No, thank you for sharing that. I've also not been on the management side. And for folks who aren't familiar with campaigns, you have your campaign manager and then your finance director. And there's usually a lot of tension between how much they want you to raise and how much you can raise and what's actually feasible. So thank you, Shelby, for centering that for a few minutes there. Folks who are in this webinar right now, make sure to continue to send questions to us as I kind of ask a few more. We can take more questions for the next like 15-ish minutes or so. Um, let's see here. We have another one. This is a little more out there, but relates to, I think, the four of us. For a candidate who's like new to the space and maybe doesn't know a lot of people who have run for office before, how and where can you find like successful fundraising professionals? Like, how do you go about finding someone who might want to staff your campaign or help out? What are the things that you should look for in particular that would make someone a good fit? Like, what kind of questions should candidates be asking of their potential fundraiser, right?
I think you need someone who's responsive, somebody who has kind of like the customer service, elements that you need to have when you're working with donors and any, supporters on a campaign. We have found interns and finance staff on our campaign working within, if you have volunteer groups, like if maybe there's a local Democratic committee, maybe your local college or university has like a Young Dems, you can always find entry level folks there. And certainly if you need a more experienced, fundraising staffer or consultant, there are platforms and job boards. Certainly Tiffany would be an excellent resource for all of you on this call. New Politics is really well connected and knows people and presumably has like a resume bank or could connect you to those resources as well. But I'm always looking for when I hire staff, and I know that when Governor Schamberger was building her finance team, people who were responsive, polite, professional. You really need to have those good people skills, both oral and written.
Definitely ditto to the job boards. I think there's lots of great organizations like New Politics and others that are both training staff. Any organization that's training staff is probably also running some sort of job board or career resume bank, something like that. And if you're looking for experienced campaign staff, most large campaigns like a national level campaign or even a gubernatorial will have an alumni listserv. So if you know someone who like worked for Obama in 2008, there's probably still an Obama '08 listserv that they can send a note out to. So those networks are also a helpful way to find folks with experience.
I think too, if you've got organizations that are excited about you running for that role, if you've got a local labor club or organization that is excited about you running, asking them about potential staff or staff that they've worked with on the past on other campaigns is a great way to find some people and to get them to be invested. I know on some larger campaigns, Emily's List, Planned Parenthood, those organizations have also helped find staff for folks. Depending on the race that you're working on, I think the bigger thing is just to find someone that's going to be organized and good at the role. That's going to uplift something that, especially you in a candidate, if you know you need a little bit of help being organized, you want to find someone and a staff member that's going to show up where you are a little bit behind the curve or feel like you don't feel as confident there. So finding someone that can do that would be important.
Thank you everybody for alluding to my closing later around resume banks and staying in touch with us. So thank you for shouting us out there. Um, I've also got a question here about like PACs versus individual donors. Can one of you just give us a quick uh, TLDR on PACs versus individuals and what you should be asking for and if they even play in campaigns early and those kind of things? So if someone could answer that, that would be grateful.
Yeah, I mean, so there's lots of different types of PACs out there. So, many of them are issue oriented. There are industry PACs, there are labor union PACs, and this is just sort of like talking about the hard side dollars, like PACs that can write a check directly to your campaign. Usually, these groups, unless, if they have a specific issue focus or a focus on elevating a certain type of candidate, they may come in your primary if you are that type of person that they are looking to elect. So, like 314 PAC wants STEM candidates to get elected to office, and they will play in primaries. A lot of these issue oriented PACs want to be with the person who is going to win the seat. And so they are less likely to get involved in a primary and are probably going to come around to you later. The other thing I'll note is that many of them are going to have a process, an endorsement process. And so, when you're in call time and you call an individual donor, at the end of that phone call, you might get your $250 right there. If you are working through a process with a PAC to get their, $1,000, $5,000 PAC check, it's going to be a longer process that involves a questionnaire. It may involve meeting with their board. It's probably going to involve multiple calls. So it's just a much longer process. Not to say that that's not important money and you should go for it. But it's probably not your early money. And it may ultimately be like a lower return on your time investment than your focus on your individual donors.
A lot of those PACs will also, Shelby, thank you for that. And this is also different on national politics versus, or like congressional races, Senate races, gubernatorial races versus like a state house rep race or a city council race. And I'll just also add that like when we talk, we haven't actually mentioned this word yet, but viability is something that we talk a lot about in fundraising. And so early Rolodexing in order to prove viability, in order to get those PACs to look at you. So that's why when everybody said earlier that your first kind of right out the gate is going to be your friends and family, that is what's really critical in your early days. And then that'll kind of build later to getting support typically in your general from larger groups. Rosetta, you came off mute.
Yeah, I think Shelby's exactly right. That those folks that are giving some of those larger donations that have a process are not going to be the first ones to give to you because they have to honor their process. What I will say is you're organizing your time and you are calling a mix of people that you've got a personal relationship with. You're calling them, some people that care about the same issues or might care about the office and the race. It's okay to add in those reach outs and updates to some of those groups that are part of those labor organizations or those PACs. So that way you are doing a little bit of that front end legwork so that hopefully that money comes in a little bit later. I think a mistake I've seen a lot of candidates make in the very beginning, especially when they don't have a team that's there to help steer them in the right direction when it comes to finance, is just kind of blitzing and making all the same type of calls in a singular call time. And hoping that that's going to result in money that's happening that day. The best call times have a little bit of personal relationship people that are there, past donor if they've already given to you, or a new person that is going to be a part of it, as well as those political relationships and check-ins that need to happen for those PACs and those labor organizations to get in touch with you. It's also just a way to make sure you know when their endorsement meeting is, and do you need to come and have an interview and sit before them. So the best thing to do is to diversify that list. When you block out your time for your calls and how you do that, make sure you're calling into a few different worlds so that way you're making the rounds for the campaign.
And I'll just add that many PACs have a lengthy endorsement process, which may include either an interview or an endorsement questionnaire. If you are just getting started and you don't have a team, you're going to really struggle with a 15-page endorsement questionnaire. Don't That's not going to be your best ROI.
Right, and sometimes that requires that you have a larger team to help you do that too. So it sometimes just comes later in the process. Again, rely on your friends and family network, and then your special interest groups, and then usually corporate PACs or labor unions. Um, I have a question, several questions here actually about data. How does data play into fundraising? If anybody could speak to that.
I can jump in. I mean, data is really like the lifeblood of your fundraising operation. Like everyone alluded to on the staffing conversation, being organized is really essential. You know, as you're making all of these calls, you have to track the outcome and the next steps and the follow up. Has the follow up been completed? Did you hear back? So, you know, I saw there was like a question in the chat about just exporting your phone records into a CSV and converting it to Excel. I mean, yes, like getting it into Excel and being able to manipulate this data so that you can find some, you know, connections and draw the networks that you may have, like, you know, categorize people. That's super important. There are CRMs that can help you do some of this work if you have the budget. So, like NGP is the tool that most Democratic campaigns are using to maintain their data, and it provides you with lots of opportunities to tag your data, like donors who fall into a specific category or have a certain interest. So you can, or in a geographic area, so that you can pull your list of folks, you know, like you're going to Charlottesville for your one Charlottesville event. Let's pull everyone from Charlottesville and make sure they know this is the one time we're coming. And so, you know, having the data in a clean format that you can manipulate is really key to making those connections and, you know, making sure you don't drop any really important leads or any follow up.
And I would
And taking a
say,
look
oh, go ahead, Whitney. Go, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, taking a look at, the results, right? Like, how many contacts did you make in an hour? How many people gave, how many of those were prospects versus resolicits? And once you start to see those numbers, it should illuminate for you what is the most successful, call time universe, for example.
The only thing I was gonna just add to both what Whitney and Shelby said is important. The only thing I would add is if you are a first time candidate and you're learning to categorize, location is an easy one to start with. If you're going to be doing some out of town things and you feel like there might be a universe to do that, like maybe you are doing that one event that's going to be in Charlottesville, but also do an invite to all the people that are 100 miles outside of there too, right? Because that's the only time you're going to be in that area, and you want to make sure that you are maximizing that opportunity. Tracking how many times you've left messages for this person or you've done an outreach. Another one that I really like to pay attention to is if you're sending out fundraising emails or just updates on the campaign, go and look at who opened it, who clicked through. Did they get the information? And then making those folks some of your first calls. Hey, I sent this email out. I want to know if you got it. We know you got it. We saw you opened it. But that's a great way to make sure that you're keeping in touch with someone. And I think that's an opportunity for them to ask questions about what you might have put out, and to get a personal update and know that the campaign is really moving in a real way. People appreciate that.
Yeah, and one more thought I'll add too is like eventually you're gonna need to go back to the people who have already given to you. You're gonna want to resolicit them to contribute again. So like knowing when was the last time they gave, how much more can they give up to the limit? Did my limit reset after my primary? Can they now, you know, come back and max to my campaign again? Like that's all data that is really important to track. And it gets unruly very quickly in a spreadsheet. So having a good system in place for tracking and being able to pull that information is really important.
I love that we were all smiling because we all know unruly spreadsheets and how insane post-launch day things can get if you don't have a CRM. Thank you guys. I have one question to close this out here before we head to kind of my closing stuff for NPA related things. What's one piece of advice? I know we've given a lot of wisdom, a lot of advice over the last 45, 50 minutes or so, but one last piece of advice that you give for a first-time candidate running for office, if you could each go.
It's okay if someone says no. It doesn't mean that you should stop trying to do what you're doing. You're going to hear a no. That's one of the answers that could possibly happen. Don't let that be discouraging. Allow that to, roll off your shoulders and move on to the next person. And that's okay. That's part of the process.
Thank you, Rosetta.
Yeah, and don't take it personally. Don't take any of it personally. Don't take the no, stay focused. If you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I can do it, I can do it. It's going to be tough. They're going to be really tough days, and surround yourself with people who care about you and a team that can support you, and just keep going.
I would say it's really important to know your why. I think for especially service-oriented candidates, you're mission-driven, and so this should be easy, but you really have to connect it not just to who you are, but the office you're running for. Why are you running for school board? Why is this, why does your skill set and your background match up to this campaign that you're running for? That is something you'll refine over time as the campaign goes, but you do need to have something right out of the gate that you're going to be telling folks that's not just like, I'm great and you should vote for me, but like, really, why should people be entrusting you in this role?
Thank you, Shelby. We do a lot of that work at New Politics Academy as well. So really grateful to the three of you for sharing your expert advice and guidance for our folks who are thinking about running for office and maybe running for office currently. Some next steps, real quick, to close us out. If you're a servant leader interested in running in the next 2 to 5 years, we have a program that's been talked about here called Foundations, where it teaches you the foundations of running for office. Our apps open May 1st, and I'm going to drop the link in the chat for everybody. If I can go to everyone, there you go. And that's on our website as well. But if you are someone who wants to work on a campaign and eventually do work like the four of us do, we recommend a ton of resume banks, and lots of orgs that work with candidates have them, as we've talked about, including organizations that work with servant leaders like ours. Here is that link as well. And we do check our resume bank all the time, so please don't like hesitate to reach out. And lastly, we've launched a new library of helpful videos on things that help folks learn how to run for office, including Rolodexing, which we've talked about here, and call time, which we've talked about here. So please, you can check that out on the link as well. Again, thank you all for your time. We really appreciate it. Hopefully, folks took away some really helpful bits from you guys. And enjoy the rest of your days. Appreciate it. Thank you.